Good day, everybody. Thanks for attending this presentation. My name is Claire Tinel from CNES, the French Space Agency, and I'm CNES representative at the International Charter Space and Major Disasters. And the goal of this presentation is to introduce you with the objectives of this charter. So the charter, the International Charter Space and Major Disaster, is an international cooperation among 17 space agencies around the world. And the aim is to provide civil securities, civil protections, and governmental authorities with satellite data for free, and satellite data that are acquired just after a major disaster, and this in order to help the rescue teams on the field. So before going into details of the charter, we will start with a video showing the general objectives of this cooperation.
Almost every week, a natural disaster happens somewhere around the world. We often watch them unfold live on the news, when forests go up in flames, when settlements collapse after an earthquake, and roads and bridges are torn away by landslides, when volcanoes erupt or severe floods wash away our communities under torrents of water. When major disasters threaten, the lives of thousands can be put at risk. Time is of the essence, and rapid, accurate data can be crucial, particularly if search and rescue teams have to access very remote terrain. Today, satellites are some of the most helpful observers on our planet. From orbit, they can see through the clouds, detect storms and fires, and even reveal the slightest movement in the Earth's crust, literally anywhere in the world. However, satellites are always moving. They pass over a region affected by a disaster for only a few seconds, and return anywhere from hours to days later. It is unlikely that a single satellite would be in place to witness a disaster when it happens. But there are many satellites circling our planet, each on a different track and capturing different views of our Earth. The chance of getting the perfect picture of the disaster zone is much higher if rescue teams can combine all of these views and pick the best of them. This is the idea behind the International Charter Space and Major Disasters, founded in the year 2000 by the European, French, and Canadian space agencies, providing the best available satellite pictures to help with disaster relief and recovery anywhere in the world, and doing it without expecting anything in return. Today, more countries from all around the world have chosen to commit their satellites to help provide the information necessary to understand the impact of major disasters, what has happened, who has been affected, and how to respond effectively. And every country in the world can access this information through the universal access the International Charter offers. An earthquake in Asia. One satellite has provided a high-resolution image of the area before, and another satellite passes over just after the tremor. The images show where homes and villages have collapsed and where roads have been blocked by landslides. Rescue teams have up-to-date information in hours, helping them decide how to access the affected area and where they can do the most good. A volcanic eruption in Africa. Special satellites are configured to observe the lava, smoke, and dust, and to deliver high-resolution maps of the affected communities. Experts can accurately assess whom to evacuate and where to establish a safe refugee camp. Flooding in Europe. A satellite gauges the amount of rainfall, while another measures the rising water level through the clouds. Yet another satellite delivers the latest map of affected areas, while others track the next storm brewing over the horizon. Citizens can be warned, trains stopped, roads closed, dams fortified, to help manage the worst of the water. We cannot prevent natural disasters from happening, but we can help to manage their consequences. Satellites provide rapid, accurate information anywhere around the world, 24 hours a day. The International Charter Space and Major Disasters is helping to save lives wherever disasters strike.
As said in the video, the charter is an international cooperation among 17 space agencies around the world. So here you have an illustration of all the space agencies. So in South America, North America, Europe, Asia, and Middle East. And what do we provide for the charter? So in case of major disasters, we provide archive images. So before the event, before the disaster, and also post-crisis images in order to make a comparison before and after, and then we are able to extract information and to provide cartographic products because it's easier for the rescue teams in the field to have a better visualization of what happens on the field. So this is for the optical images. And the second type of images are radar images, so that are mainly used for floods, because then we are able to identify the extent of the flood. So here in black, because the radar signal is attenuated. And then in order to provide an extent of the floods, here for this example, you have the initial river. It was for floods in Germany in 2013. And in light blue, the extent of floods. So how does it work? About the mechanism? Somewhere in the world, a major disaster occurs, and if the country thinks that the satellite images are could be pertinent for helping the rescue teams, they request a charter activation. When the charter is activated, satellites are tasked, and pertinent satellites, because we will, depending on the type of event, so earthquake or floods or cyclones, hurricanes, we will not task the same satellites. And then satellites are tasked within 3 hours. And in less than 24 hours, the first satellite images are acquired. And we use, so this is an example of post-crisis image acquired after Hurricane Sandy in Haiti in 2012. And you can see that it's very difficult to identify the damages. So an archive image was used, just an example, but we do that for each activation. And an archive image was used in order to make a comparison. And then it was people were able to extract the information and to identify the initial bed river here in dark blue, and the extent of the bed river here in light blue after the storm, the hurricane. And here the red squares represent houses, buildings that were shaped by the river. And all those information, so both satellite images and maps, are immediately transmitted, disseminated to the civil protections and governmental authorities of the pays that was impacted. The mean number of activations of the charter per year is about 40 activations. Last year in 2019, we had 43 activations. Today we are on the 16th of November, and yesterday we had the 49th activation of the year. So we will have a lot of activations for this year. This is because of different reasons. The first one we will see later is because more and more countries have now a direct access in order to activate the charter. And the second thing is that we experiment the fact that maybe with climate change, we don't have more disasters, but those disasters are really more intensive and then request the help of satellites. Concerning the repartition of the different types of events for the charter activations, the charter is activated for half for floods, and then the second higher number of activation is for cyclones and hurricanes. And if you add floods, cyclone, hurricanes, storms, wildfires, which occur after drought periods, and also landslides, which occur after heavy rains, we have about 75% of the charter activations which are due to hydrometeorological areas. And this percentage was only 65 7 years ago, and it was about 75 so last year, and for 2019 it reached about 90% of the different activations. So just to let you know that today, so the charter was created in 2000, so 20 years ago, by 3 space agencies, the French, Canadian, and European space agencies. Today, we are 17 space agencies. The charter can be activated for every country in the world, but in order to activate the charter, countries have to be what we call authorized users. So the authorized users are civil protections of the countries that are charter members, so from the 17 space agencies, and also all Europe, because ESA and EUMETSAT are part of the charter. And in 2013, we created the universal access in order to give the possibility, the opportunity to each country in the world to directly activate the charter for their own purposes or for helping a neighboring country. And in order to be part of this new universal access and to become authorized user, each country has to become 3 criteria. The first one is that the entity who will activate the charter has to be a national, an entity with a national mandate of risk disaster management. Second one, the country should be able to communicate in English because the official language of the charter is English. And the third one, the country should be able to download satellite images and cartographic products. So as of today, from today, 28 countries are now authorized users through the universal access, including Peru. Peru has been authorized users, so in CEDI, who is the civil protection of Peru, has been authorized user since 2018, and now we'll see the different activations that took part in Peru for those last years.
The Charter is a group of space agencies and space data providers which came together to provide very quickly data of several satellites in the cases of major disasters worldwide.
The space agencies and satellite operators that work within the Charter have dedicated themselves to making sure that the data is available for humanitarian use. There are a great many satellites operated and owned by a great many people around the world.
That means that we join all the forces to acquire images as fast as possible.
We are trying to help the people when they are suffering from natural disasters. This is the main goal.
When I hear in the media that there is a disaster, I immediately think about the Charter, if we are going to be activated.
An activation of the Charter is initiated by an authorised user who is a nationally mandated civil protection authority. When this authorised user makes a request into the Charter, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the Charter mobilises automatically all the satellite resources to make maps and information products.
Usually it takes several hours to extract the crisis information from the remote sensing data. So 1.5 days after the activation, the first crisis products can be delivered.
Maps are being provided that the users can work with, where they can quickly see that's maybe the road we can still use and that's the road which is not there anymore, or where the bridges are destroyed.
We developed a system that is named COS2 that is accessible from everywhere. It concentrates all the information that we have in terms of risk analysis and maps, and also helps a lot even people that are not very knowledgeable about satellite technology.
For example, you can see here the dark areas are related to the damaged areas created by the very heavy wildfires. So the disaster relief organizations in the field get the data and send rescue teams to the affected areas and perhaps to evacuate the people.
We have several hundreds of activations.
About 40 activations every year, that's basically one every week.
In 2011, Great Earthquake and Great Tsunami hit Japan. More than 1,000 images was provided to Japan from the disaster charter.
Two weeks ago, we used the data from the international charter. The helicopter can show us the local picture, but the satellite image can show us the large scale.
We had a major flooding in Brazil. We immediately activated the International Disaster Charter so we could plan a sequence of expeditions and seek for survivors. It was extremely relevant for us.
Our goal is to have users in all the countries of the world, countries that don't have satellites themselves.
In order to receive the data from the charter members, it's just enough to become an authorized user without any payments.
We are trying to open the door to any country. The process is simple. They need to register in the system, receive some training.
We explain these user organizations how it works and how they can activate us.
And it's really as simple as that.
We have the cooperation between different countries, different culture, different languages, without any political aspect.
I believe it's an example of the good things that the countries can do together.
Now I can say that we do contribute to the humanity.
I know that the other member will help me, and this kind of transmission is like a family.
So here you can see on this virtual globe all the activations from 2000. So today from 2,686 activations around the world. Half, as already said, for floods. So you can see that floods occur all around the world. And about hurricanes, cyclones, it depends on the parts of the Earth. So here you can see all the different hurricanes which occurred in the Caribbean and also in South Asia. About earthquakes, you can see here the path of the Ring of Fire, and they're here in North, Central, and South America. Same as for volcanoes, because of the Andes Cordillera. And here also some volcanic eruptions in Indonesia. And about the activations in Peru, the charter was already activated 8 times. So just some examples. So here floods in 2012, Volcan Ubinas in 2013, and also last year. Still floods in 2010, earthquake in 2007, floods in 2014, floods and landslides in 2009, floods in 2017, the last one for earthquake in 2019. So the activations before 2017 were activations from either United Nations or from CNES, the Argentinian Space Agency. And the 2 last activations, so in 2017 and 2019, were directly requested by INDECI, because Peru is now authorized user, and all the project management, what we call the project management, this is to manage the activation, so to perform the link between the space agency, the authorized users, the end users, the different rapid mapping services, was performed the last 2 times by CONIDA. Now I would like to show an example in detail, so an example of activation. So this concerns the earthquakes that occurred in Nepal in 2015, in April 2015. Sorry. So the epicenter was located about 80 kilometers in the northwest of Kathmandu, with a magnitude of 7.9, so a very big earthquake with which was felt in Nepal and also in the north of India. And the charter was activated only 1 hour and a half just after the earthquake. So it was activated by India, by the United Nations, and also by China for some areas of interest in Tibet, because there was also damages in the north of the Himalayan mountains. And what was asked by those different entities was to have satellite images of different parts, so of Nepal, so the entire country, and also north of India, and especially some precise locations such as Kathmandu, also where there was the epicenter, and also about locations where damages were supposed to occur. and we acquired the first image, so only less than 20 hours after the activation. So only 20 hours and a half after the earthquake, it was the first one was over Kathmandu, but it was an optical image and there are clouds, so it was possible to extract any information. And the second image on the same path of the satellite, so it was Pleiad satellite from CNES, we acquired an image over a town in North India, and we were then able to see that there were no damages. But 48 hours after the earthquake, a second image was acquired over Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, and Kathmandu. In Kathmandu, there were not so many damages, but people were really afraid of the aftershocks. So after the first shock, and they didn't want to stay in their house, so they mounted tents in over free areas such as park areas, private or public gardens. And what was decided was to identify the population gatherings. So here in yellow, you can see here a very high resolution optical images that was acquired over Kathmandu, and you can here identify in blue, white, orange the different tents, and then the interpretation and the result of the map, and the decision was taken to identify groups of tents. Here, this is an image acquired several months before the earthquake over Kathmandu with the Rajahara Tower here. It's easy to see the shadow of the tower. And here, only 2 days after the earthquake, you can see here all the spontaneous gatherings here over this free area. Also other tents. You can also identify some tents over parking areas or in gardens. And here you can see the tower that was completely destroyed by the first shock of the earthquake. So this is very different. This is very important for the different rescue teams, the civil protections, to know where is the population, where are people, in order to be able to bring food and drinkable water. What is important also in case of earthquakes is to understand and to know to quantify the damages on the buildings, the houses. So here you have a village, and with the identification of the different damages of housing, so from yellow to red, so very low damages, orange middle damages, and in red completely destroyed. So this is at a village scale. So then the rescue teams know where they have to go in priority. So for the rescue teams, it's also important important to know because when you have earthquakes, you have damages for housings, buildings, but you have also landslides, landslides that will block the roads, but also that will sweep the camps, the housings. So it's optical satellites help to identify this kind of landslides just here in a valley of Himalaya mountains. So this is Langtang area. Langtang area was a trekking camp. Here you all hope the small houses here in green, but this was before the earthquake and after the earthquake. So you have here's the extent of the landslide. So you can see that here, in order to access the camp, it's not possible anymore because of the landslides. So here on the right side and also on the left side, there are about here 120 people killed in this trekking camp because of the landslide. So here you have a landslide at a scale of a valley and with different resolution and different satellites. The charter was able to identify single landslides or groups of landslides over the Himalaya chain. So here you have Kathmandu, the mountains, and in red and yellow, the different landslides. So it's very important for the rescue teams because then they're able to know whether the roads are blocked or not by the landslides. Then it's also important because landslides can block the valleys, and if you have heavy rains just after the earthquake, you can have natural dam collapse and then floods in the valleys. So this is a prevention for the rescue teams. We have seen earlier that we can identify and have an estimation, quantification of the damages of the building, the houses damages at a village scale. And we are also able, with the help of satellite images, and it's why it's important to have satellite images that are able to cover a very large area of interest and at very high resolution. This is an example of an acquisition. So 1 week after the first shock, there are some aftershocks in the eastern part of Kathmandu, here in those very far mountains from Kathmandu. And India asked for the civil protection of Nepal to identify not which houses were damaged or destroyed, but at a scale of villages and hamlets. So now each circle represents a village and not a house. Earlier, previously, where each square was representing a house, so now it's a hamlet or village. Here, so you have 2 valleys, and the size of the circles depends on the size of the hamlets, and you have the same scale for the quantification quantity of damages. So from yellow to slightly damaged to red, completely destroyed, and so this allows to have an estimation of the damage in those valleys that are very far from the capital and not easy to access. And also the identification of the roads in order to access the different villages. And here's the right triangles represent some small landslides. So when the roads are blocked, and also the blue triangles represent the identification of emergency tents that were mounted by the population. So you can see here that those villages here cannot be accessed by the rescue teams because the road is blocked there and here and here. So the only possibility to access those villages is to use helicopters. So here we have an example of Pleiade images acquired before and after the disaster. So here in the rice fields, before and after, we can identify some several tents which were settled up by the population. Here along this road, so before the disaster and after, we have a landslide here. It's a small landslide, but it's enough to block the road. And here a village, so before the disaster and after the disaster, with the identification of the buildings that were damaged by the aftershocks of the earthquake. And in order to finish, still an archive, so a pre-crisis and a post-crisis satellite image of a village in those mountains. So you can see that you don't have you don't have only damages concerning about building houses, but also within the rice fields. So it's also an environmental and economic disaster. So I try to give you a very quick overview about the help of satellites for rescue teams after a disaster. What is important to note and to record is that why do we use satellite? Because we have a global view over the situation. And the satellites can be very reactive, and we in the Charter constellation. The Charter constellation is composed of about 60 satellites, so we are sure to have at least several images in less than 24 hours after the Charter activation. What I would like to remind is that we are not sure to save lives, but the feedbacks we have from authorized users, from end users, from the governmental authorities is that the satellite images and the maps provided are really helpful as a communication tool, as a decision tool for rescue teams that are in the field. So I thank you for your attention. I hope it answers your questions. If you have more questions, you can contact me at claire.tinel, Tinel, at CNES.fr. Thank you again, and keep safe and take care. Have a good day.